Good evening, friends. Welcome back to the Career Shifts podcast. This is the journey to the future. This community continues to grow, not just in numbers, but in depth. And that's what makes this podcast an interesting one for me personally, as well, as it is about shifting gears, shifting careers, shifting leadership, and shifting how we see the future. Today's conversation doesn't flip an idea, but it's about a blind spot that we all have been guilty of. We talk about behavioral change all the time in boardrooms, classrooms, offices, government memos, HR policies, in how we parent, how we learn, how we lead as well. But almost all of it rests in one flawed assumption that people are conscious actors, that change is a matter of awareness, willpower, logic, and yet neuroscience tells us something totally different. The conscious mind processes just a fraction of what the brain actually absorbs. The rest, habit, instinct, emotion, and conditioning, these are all on autopilot at all times. So here's a question. If behavior largely is unconscious, why are we still trying to change it with conscious tools? Why do we expect posters to fix culture? Why do we think rules will override reflex? Why do we keep talking about periscope when the real work is happening deep in submarine? To explore this, I turned into someone who has been challenging these assumptions and changing lives for over 2 decades. Meet Biju Dominic, chairman of Final Mile Consulting, chief evangelist at Fractal Analytics, and one of the rare thinkers who brought neuroscience and behavioral science out of the lab into the real world. From preventing railway deaths in India to improving HIV treatment adherence in Africa to shaping leadership behaviors inside global corporations, Biju's work spans continents, but insight remains the same. You don't change behavior by telling people what to do. You change it by understanding why they do what they do without even realizing. People don't think their way to change, they are wired into patterns. So if you lead people, shape systems, or care human potential, this episode will shift your lens forever. So let's dive in. Biju, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Gopal. It's good. It's really good.
Wonderful. Biju, this journey started about a year ago. Uh, the attempt was very simple, very small, very humble. Bring in perspectives of careers, reinvention, shifts, and which is why it was called Career Shifts. But this year, when I started the journey, it was more about not just talking about the shifts, but also about prepping ourselves up for what is it that we need to do in the future. So I've had some phenomenal thought leaders come and share their perspectives about simpler things like attention, or even as a big topic like India 2047. Um, but none of it is going to be possible without really looking at behaviors. And I think that's what made it even more important for us to have this conversation. We'll get into all of that, but any opening thoughts or comments that you have for people watching, listening on their platforms?
You're right. I think behind all of what we do, I think everything revolves around human behavior. And I think Demis Hassabis, who even now are at the forefront of artificial intelligence, I think one of his quotes says, "The more we understand the inscrutable algorithms between our ears, better will be the technology we create." I would add to that by
Wow.
saying, and even the adoption of the technology. And as
Yeah.
you rightly said, all that around us, innovations all around us, finally, what it matters is how people actually use it, how people adopt it. So human behavior is at the center of everything that happens around us. So we need to understand human behavior. or let me put the other way around. Whoever understands human behavior better will be the people who really would succeed in the world.
That's powerful. I think with all that is happening in the world today with regards to tech advancements, shifts in jobs, or even mental well-being as an one of the most often spoken about things these days in the workplaces, or even in general. I think it all boils down to behaviors. So we'll decode all of that today. But for a moment, let me put the spotlight on you. Let's kind of decode your career shifts, if I can ask that. Walk the audience through, where did it all begin, and how did neuroscience happen to you? Was that a conscious or an unconscious choice?
No, what was a conscious choice was even, I think, the first year of me joining an engineering college, I knew that this is not meant for me.
Mm,
So, and even getting through SSB in the pre-final year and getting into Indian Air Force, I just went there because SSB interview was in Bangalore, and you could
mm,
visit Bangalore those days, for what. And
mm.
but I knew engineering was not meant for me. So I did my MBA after that, and I think human behavior is something that really interests me right from the beginning. And 16 years of my career, the beginning, 16, 17 years, I was in the world of advertising. And
Mm.
there you're trying to understand and influence human behavior. In the next
Yeah.
16, 17 years of my career, I think I question all that I learned and I practiced in the first 16 years of my career. So that's the summary that you have about what I have done in my life so far.
Right, right. And I think beautifully put. I mean, I'm off late given the work that I do in the career space and the podcast journey as well has introduced me to a lot of people who have started questioning everything that they have done in their first 15, 20 years of their career. And that's what we typically call it as mid-career, midlife crisis. I mean, you really start even questioning the reason why you did what you did. Uh, and I would love to hear your perspectives, some maybe in a bit about is there a neuroscience behind it, which kind of triggers this. But Biju, I mean, it's incredible in terms of what you're doing, the kind of work that you have been doing, be it regards to the railway accident story that we spoke about. I know I listened to this first when I attended your lecture through ODCP, which is something that Santosh Babu and TISS used to do together. And, you know, it really gives, I mean, I was awestruck, to be honest, about how that was so trivial and yet so profound in at the same time. But let's walk through, the specifics about what is this. I mean, what is this phenomenon that is really causing this shift, or if you can just dive a little deeper in terms of behaviors, the brain, the stories that we hear, and what is it that it is trying to tell us.
I think we have to take a step back before I talk about what I'm doing right now, and which is actually about our traditional view of the human behavior. I think a
Yeah,
traditional view of human behavior is that we are rational beings. So you just tell him, what the consequences of your action is. No one wants to have any problems in life, so they won't get into that particular behavior. Or you tell them the rewards of doing a particular behavior, and they will actually go and go towards that particular behavior because that's part of being rational. We also believe that we are very conscious, and so uh, I'm as a human supposed to know. I know what I'm doing. I know why I did what I did, and I think it was very easy because could be religion, could be our legal frameworks, on all of them. It was very easy to construct. I mean, if you look at all that they have constructed is around these two things. That
yeah,
you did this, that means you were aware of what you were doing, and you knew what the consequences are, and then you've gone ahead and done that. So if you look at our, I'm just talking about our traditional religion, our legal frameworks, all were based on it. Later, when we started business, we said, okay, that's what our communication should be. Just build awareness about the consequences of the problem. So cigarette smoking is injurious to health. Surgeon General, as long as it's written there, people will stop
Yeah.
smoking. Or you tell them in an organization that these are the visions of the organization, and if you work towards it, this is the things that will happen, and you talk about that, and people will get excited and will get motivated to work towards it. Look at our
Yeah.
market research techniques. Our market research techniques are all about I come and put a questionnaire in front of you and ask you questions as to why you bought that particular soap or what is your likings or dislikes about the organization. And
Yeah.
we believe on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, I can convert that liking into a number and put it up there. And that's a
Yeah.
level of rationality we have taken our market research to. So our communication, market research, all has been based on this. But I
Yeah.
think somewhere in my life, and more so, as I said, 16, 17 years of my career, I worked with a lot of leading companies, launched a lot of brands in this country. Morgan Stanley Mutual Fund, the first mutual fund, the Rexona deodorant, Axe deodorant. I launched deo category in India. Nestle milk, or Kinetic scooters, various, Reliance Infocom, Reliance Petroleum. The number of brands I would have been part of, either leading it or part of a launch team, just the launches itself were significant. But even as I was working, I knew one thing, that I'm not doing a good job of influencing human behavior. I
Mm.
knew that crores of rupees that the clients were giving me to get the people to buy that brand is not really working. Now, almost 10 or 15 years, and almost 7, much later, none of those brands exist. That means, why did I spend all those crores of rupees? I think that feeling of, guilt, very honestly, having wasted so much of my clients' money, it's a middle class value. Your parents
Mm.
teach you, or most of your mother teaches you, obviously don't waste your money. But if it's someone else's money, forget about someone else's money. If it's someone else's umbrella, you say, no, 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 be careful. You should bring
Mm.
it back properly
Correct.
because it's our neighbor's umbrella. But
Yeah.
here, clients are giving me tens and hundreds of crores, expecting that the brands will sustain itself for at least 5, 10 years. Here, within 2 years or 5 years or 10 years of the launch, the brand is gone, which means something was wrong. And think that is when I really started questioning. And I asked myself, where is the problem? Is it because I'm not practicing this conscious, rational man properly and then doing my research? I'm not preparing a questionnaire methods appropriately? Or I said, is this theory itself wrong? I think
Mm.
that changed my life. And that's around the time when behavioral economics was coming in, early 2000,
Yes.
two Nobel Prize, Daniel Kahneman. He said, yeah, we are not rational, we are irrational. By then, I
Mm.
was also reading into the human brain. And I said, if you look through the lens of neuroscience, brain sciences, then this consciousness doesn't work. And that was
Mm.
a huge realization for me, that this existing paradigm of human behavior, and so the practices that are revolving around it, is fundamentally flawed. And I need to
Mm.
search for a new, direction altogether. That is how I moved into the world of neuroscience. And and
Wonderful.
just to continue, once I
Yeah.
got into the world of neuroscience, the learnings that were coming in were not incremental.
Mm.
As you rightly said at the beginning of the introduction, that we thought consciousness, but then the neuroscience is saying there are 11 million bits of processing in our brain. 11 million. Of the 11 million, only 77 of them actually work at a conscious level. Now, that is a leap. That is huge, which
Wow.
means you have to completely relook at the way we have looked at human behavior. Now, that is the challenge because, again, our brain is a problem because our brain is not created to accept new knowledge. because we work just with 13 wards. So our brain is
Mm.
not geared to learn new things and more so to unlearn. And so to now tell the world that all the market research techniques, all your communication strategies, all that you thought, all your training programs, awareness building programs that you've been doing is all wrong and you need to redo it. Hmm. And for the
Mm.
last 17, 18 years, I've been trying to convince people that please, things have changed. Let's move. Yeah, some people listen. And that's how the railways and whole lot of other stories actually happen.
Incredible. I think everything that you just shared challenges the notion. And at times, I wonder with, I mean, I also play a role in academy, and I've had a short stint with an top ranked business school in India, where if you really look at competitive exams today, it's done totally differently and for a purpose of filtering people out. And what people go through after that into a few years into the 2 years of MBA program builds them for skills that they could potentially use at workplaces. But what you're sharing is totally different, because here we are in the world of startups where even not even 2 years perhaps, we probably uh, find ourselves getting out of the system in few months or few weeks. There is fundamentally something wrong. And you're also right when you say that it is not easy for human beings to change. And we are wired in a certain way to keep falling back upon our values, beliefs, behavioral systems. Where do we start this journey, Biju? I think it's important for us to realize that there is a problem in hand that we have. The population is not really going away anywhere. There is a lot more unemployment that we can see on the roads, which is going to create more issues, if not anything else. How do we solve for this? Where do we start this journey of changing the behaviors?
Now we take each of the significant problems. Each organization I go to, I tell them, give me your biggest and most unsolved of the problems you have. And that my the best way to prove it. If I can solve that problem in a new way, using this new approach to human behavior, then I can build that confidence within that organization that think there is a new way, and the new way is actually working. And that is why you know we took the railway, because that is the single largest cause of unnatural death in Mumbai city. 12 to
Mm,
15 people die every day,
every day.
and in Mumbai, as they cross the railway tracks, and as they're crossing the railway tracks, they're hit by a train.
Yeah.
And Indian Railways, I think they tried their best. The typical conscious, rational, which is trying to put up warning boards, trains, danger, do not cross the railway tracks.
Mm,
They tried to put the police, RPF, to make sure that over crosses wherever they can catch, they give fines to those people. Announcements are made. They have made foot over bridges. Some places they have built walls. So all the traditional ways to deal with it has been tried. And we felt, for example, that we can prove that, okay, we can find a solution to that particular problem. Or when we took on road accidents, everybody says, oh, road accidents, no way. And it's never gone down. We still lose about close to 1.5, 2 lakh of people die every year, if not more, in Indian roads. So we took on and said, okay, well, let's take that particular problem. Or we said, in Africa, the biggest issue was the AIDS was spreading. And we said, okay, teenage sexuality has to be managed. I mean, it's teenagers and their brains, and that too, their sexual behavior is very personal. Can we manage it? And we've said we showed how we can do. So I think we took on some of the toughest problems in the world. Like in
mm,
Delhi, in Sanjay Gandhi colony, it's one of the biggest slums in Delhi. And we said, India, people throw things everywhere, garbage is all around. We proved that in the midst of that particular slum, we can get the whole lane, people not to throw their things all around, but gather it in their plastic bag so that the morning the cleaning person can actually collect it and go. So we proved using this new science that we can actually make or mitigate some of the most significant human behavior problems in the world. And I think, Gopal, that's the only way. Give the proof, because there's no point in speaking about theory, because theory, a lot of books have been written. And all those books that you see behind me, a lot of
Mm.
them are about the human brain that has come in the last 10, 15 years. Even I'm writing a book, but mostly it's all about
Yes.
these case studies and
Yeah.
then talking about it. I think everyone needs a proof. And I think over the years, I think each of these case studies have gone on to convince few more people that there is a new way of looking at human behavior. So we have to begin it that way. And I hope over and over a point of time things will happen. But I'm also conscious of the fact, Gopal, that I think Max Planck, I think, said it long back. The new changes or great discoveries, happen only with every funeral. So the traditional people have to go to the cemeteries and crematoriums, and the new set of people have to come in. Even the fact that the Earth is not the center of the human behavior universe. The discovery of Galileo
Yeah.
actually took more than 100 years to actually become a common belief. So the fact that conscious, rational man is not the center of the human behavior universe, this non-conscious, emotional self is the center, actual center of the human behavior universe, will take that 100 years. But we have to begin.
Mm. We have to begin, I'm sure. But sometimes what scares me is the sheer size, the size of what we are trying to change. What you could achieve in Mumbai in terms of railway crossing is one thing. I mean, we lost a few lives just a couple of weeks ago, even when they were not crossing the railway lines. It was really
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Right.
But talk about our education system, talk about our evaluation system, talk about the way we are onboarding people, making them work, the whole GCC phenomena that we keep talking about. There is a lot of aspects that continues to evolve. Are we keeping the pace at which we need to be moving in terms of bringing in this change? Because if fundamentally what you're saying is that we need to challenge the old ways of thinking and old ways of behaving, uh, how do we bring this all together?
I think, as you rightly said, much before we speak about techniques to change, I
Mm.
believe any change, even within us, happens. The first step should be a feeling that what I'm doing right now is not working. A feeling of inadequacy
Mm.
is what is important. And so, if you really look at it, and that's why I'm trying to do in a lot of my classes and sessions to say, hey, look at human behavior related problems. What is the success rate? So show it and say, look at the organized religion. Most of them are about 3,000, 4,000 years. They have been, they all have the commandments, 10 or 12, I don't know what they are. And for the last 3,000 to 4,000 years, they have been saying, don't do it, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I often ask people, has any of those religions reduced even one commandment and said, okay, now on only 9 because we have managed that one? It is just a
Yeah.
reminder for us that we haven't changed across. Or look a bit more closer, and I look at HBR articles and I quote that. The failure rate in new product launches, when I started my MBA, my marketing professor said is 90%. Now, can
Mm.
anyone actually say that my new product launches is actually, is better than that? I mean, I have a
Mm.
success rate. We're still in that 80-90% failure rate. Look at change management programs. Again, I'm quoting an HBR article which said 65 to 90% of the change management programs fail within 6 months. Look at M&As. M&As across the world, in terms of managing to add positive shareholder values, 90% of them fail. So
Mm.
while certain aspects of things, and as you said, the brands I launched, yeah, was the successful. Rexona deodorant for about 3-4 years was huge, wonderful. But look at the penetration of deodorants. I launched that in 1995. Now, almost 30 years later, now you're looking at that and saying, what is the penetration of deodorants in India? Less than 10%. After 30 years of so much of effort. We have not managed to convince more than 10% of Indians, please use a deodorant in your underarm because there you have a problem called body odor. I think
Mm.
so. As long as we start realizing that what we are doing so far is not working, I think start creating that feeling of inadequacy. I think the moment you have a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of ignorance, is where you start looking at things. Otherwise, we will all live, we will find our own comfort zones as to what I'm doing is right, which means I don't have to change. I don't have to learn anything new. So I think that is where Gopal, as you rightly said, you said you're a teacher and teaching in business schools. The hope is not in the people who've been practicing all this for the last 25, 30 years. They're not going to change. But I
Yeah.
think the hope is in our new generation. I think the kids who are leaving the business schools, they should start realizing that the old universe of human behavior is wrong and there is a new way of looking at human behavior. That's the beginning, Gopal.
Wonderfully said. And I completely agree. It has to come from within, and it has to make you feel that it doesn't work, or what served for you is no longer serving you. Um, and it requires you to do something different. Now, coming back to the point where we started this conversation about the whole mid-career professionals, I'm sure, I mean, I think one of the trigger points or tipping points in your journey was the same time when you would have thought, okay, whatever I did didn't work for me, so let me kind of relook at the way things are being done. And here you are after another 16, 17 years into your journey of having done so much work, as well as also writing a book. I often speak to a lot of mid-career professionals, and today the definition of mid-careers starts at 35 and perhaps even goes up to 55. So it's that like a 20-year, I mean, journey in many ways. The fundamental question that they have is, I have always been successful in doing what I'm doing,
Mm.
um, and it has worked certain way for me, but it's not working. Like I've been applying for jobs, but no one even bothers to respond to me, and goes back to the point that you made, that unless we don't feel that from within, that there is something wrong, we wouldn't change. Now, for someone who is in that phase of their life, and this could be even a 25-year-old who's entering into an job market or workforce for that matter, what are some of the self diagnostics one can do to be able to understand that there needs to be certain things that they need to change? Like, are there fundamentally things that one, is there a toolkit basically, is what I'm trying to understand?
See, one of the toolkits I use for myself, and one of the things within my team, anyone who's worked with me knows one thing, is that, you know, my biggest enemy is status quo. So if
Mm,
I'm making a presentation, I have told myself that if I'm making the same presentation tomorrow, as you said, Gopal, I have that session actually next Saturday. I have that session for the new batch of
mm,
students. They're coming.
mm,
Now you
mm.
can compare the presentation I made to your batch. I don't know how many years back it was,
Yeah.
what it is. I'll make sure, even if it was last month and this month, I will make a change. I will
Mm,
not make the same presentation. That is one, which is, I always believe that whatever you've done, there's always a better way to do it. And I think you should find that new way of doing it. That's one. Two, you know, questioning the status quo before someone tells you that you are out of place and you are useless. I think you yourself should actually say that I don't want to be out of place, or I don't want to be, outdated. So what I will do is, I will go with what the things are where it is changing. But as you said, the biggest problem is our own success of the past of holding on to it. Many times, 20, 25 years, you taught even so many juniors, this is the way to do things around. And it's like what happened 18, 19 years when you launch so many brands and all, brand building. This is how you build a brand. I mean, I also taught in a lot of business schools now some of the people who started working with me subsequently were my students. Now, to them, when I said all that I've learned so far is all not working, basically you're coming back to the starting line along with your students. Is it
Yeah.
easy? I can tell you, Gopal, it is not easy. It is not easy. But then maybe I'm surviving, having a relevance even today in any meetings is because I continue to question myself and I'm willing to burn the past. I think that ability to burn the past is not a weakness. I think to me, I would say it's a strength. I made a mistake. The way I went about launching those brands using mass media advertising, no, it's all wrong. I think
Yeah.
when you say it, the person's listening to says, this man knows what can go wrong. So let me listen to him. So I think I think people on the other side know that questioning yourself, questioning it's a good thing. But I think it's our own inability, because you said our success, our expert power, because people came to our office and spoke to us and all that will go away. Now that fear,
Yeah.
we need to manage it, and that is my request to all the people who are in the mid levels, that question yourself, question the status quo, uh, much before the world questions you. You question it. And so by reading this, and even if you are in a few months or even, I read it, I know, yeah, this is not right, I've been talking about it. It sends a very different signal to the person listening to you. Question the status quo. We need to.
Question the status
That's the
quo.
only way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think when you say this about an individual, I think one of the other challenges that we all are battling these days is about organizations, right? I mean, and I often say this, that organizations are nothing but a huge set of collections of people, right? And each one of them have a particular behavioral pattern. Now, what is being spoken about, seen, written about is the fact that organizational cultures are diluting in comparison to what used to be a good culture in the past. Um, I feel it's a reflection of who we are as people, but maybe I'm wrong. But the fact is, organizations today are battling the cultural issue. Now, it's so difficult for an individual to change. You're saying we need to challenge the status quo. How different, difficult it is for organizations. In your experience, also of coaching, mentoring organizations, what is your advice to them on what is it that they can do to change themselves from an organizational perspective?
One of the things we learn, especially when you talk about human behavior, is that it's not individual that matters alone. Many times the context is actually much bigger a determinant
Correct.
of the behavior of the people. Now let's take organizations, and if you take the traditional organizations in the 50s and 60s, most of them, even some of the private sector companies, what they did was employees lived close by, they had townships, there was a
Yeah.
relationship between people. So that's how it was. Organization, family members, they were all sort of together. Then
Yeah.
you had the 80s and 90s where, okay, families were somewhere, but I think people start working, or at least extended family, your those who are working across. Now, if you see, even that has changed, but people were coming to office. They were all under one roof, for 8 or 10 hours every day. So that was more of the organizations, so the up to the COVID scenario. Now, post-COVID scenario, things have actually changed. Now, the amount of employees and organizations getting employees to come under one roof is very different. Now, how do you create a relationship between both of us when you're on the Zoom call for about 1 hour, and then after that you're doing your work, I'm doing my work? It's difficult. And I think there are some fundamental changes in the context of an organization that has happened. And
Mm.
in this new context, building a relationship is, or the culture is very, very tough. But then I often, when I was looking at neuroscience or this new approach, I often say, is it a new approach, or are there some people who've been doing this, these principles without knowing
Mm.
neuroscience and other things very well? And my belief is organized religion and politicians have been practicing these, what I call this new science, long back. So in one of my
Hmm.
columns, I've written saying that, okay, is there a way to manage people when people just meet for some few hours, about 1 or 2 days in a week? I said, look at organized religion. They've been getting people on a Friday or a Saturday or on a Sunday for about one and a
So
half
true.
hours, and they created one of the strongest organizations that you can ever think of. Now, that is when you realize today organizations have not redefined what should employees do when they come to office. Is it to work? So they're working from home, so they come to office also to work? Or is it something else? And when you look at the organized religion and look at that 1.5 hours of ritual and deconstruct it right from the beginning to the end, you will see, these guys know quite a bit of things about building a community. I think that
Yeah.
is where our HR professionals and others have to learn a lot from some of these organizations who are doing an excellent job. So things have changed, but learnings is around us. It's just a matter of opening up instead of just reading some, typical our so-called professional. Learn from organized religion. Learn from politicians. They do an amazing job of building, strong loyalties. And I still remember one of the events that I still stuck in my head is in the early 90s there was a police firing in Kerala, and against the youth. Some protest happened, and one of the youth died. And the television camera comes to the house of this particular youngster who died. He's the only bread earning member of that family. And the cameraman, or the person asked this father, saying, what do you think? The man with the bare chest sitting across, he says, you know my son died for the party, and I'm proud of my son. That's when you realize, hey, what is this party doing to build this level of loyalty among people? And I realize if organizations can learn even 10% of how politicians actually create this level of loyalty, you build organizations that are really robust and strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, there are other examples about this, which we will not get into, which is going to cause problems for us. But but you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that we can learn from both of this. And as you were sharing that, I was reminded of the rituals that we were all doing throughout the year, like be it the Ekadashi Vradam or the kind of fast and the rituals that we would do during a specific month in a year. And I think every religion has its equivalent of that, right? I mean, you give up non-veg, you give up alcohol, practice certain style of living. And I've come to realize and believe that it boils down to discipline, rituals, and routines, which keeps coming back to a lot of conversations these days about the fact that
Yeah.
we have forgotten to, we haven't really, I mean, I would say we haven't really also understood habits well, which used to be a fundamental cornerstone of our schooling earlier. But I think no longer schools really do uh, talk about habits. What is your view of habits in neuroscience? Like, I mean, where does that fall in the whole?
I think
Um,
habits are what is the ultimate level of a behavior where you don't no more have to now remind people, is automatically just happen. So it's a dream. If you can,
yeah,
become a habit, and whatever you talked about becomes a habit, it's brilliant because you're thinking then not consciously. For example, when you learn anything for the first time, like learning driving, for example, you're learning consciously, changing gear, accelerator, sorry, clutch, this, press this. Now, the moment it becomes a habit, that means you're not really thinking as to what you're doing there. It becomes non-consciously you do that. And that is the great thing about a habit. Habit becomes automatic a process where amount of energy consumption required is very, very little. But creating a habit, as you rightly said, the regularity of it, that's where rituals becomes very, very important. And I believe
yeah,
in organizations I think one of the ways they can really build organizations, strong organizations, cultures is when you have strong rituals. And there was
Mm.
an organization, it's an insurance company that had a lot of mis-selling, and we had to create a culture of integrity. So, about 15,000 frontline sales staff they have across, I don't know, some almost 300, 400 branches in India. Nothing what we created are rituals, equivalent of what organized religion does, that every week they come together and what they do in that 1 hour of discussion, we have created it into a ritualistic form with certain repetitive scenarios are gone, learning from what, for example, Indian Army, for example, everything is ritualized. So if you
Yeah.
look at that, so learning from the army, learning from organized religion, I think we put that. Our success rate was very high. I think we managed to create that culture. So creating that rituals and so creating a habit is very, very important. But it's not easy. And but one of the things recently that one of the projects we did was in one of the Middle East countries where we had to create, let's call it a habit of people to walk more steps. And then, it's one of those very rich countries where people are very obese, and because they don't have any need to really walk because there are a lot of servants
Mm.
around. There, I think that that let's call it that inducing them to walk. We used obviously they have smart watches, so we got the data from there, and then we used an AI sort of a platform, and then on their smartphones we created a sort of a stimuli to get them to do. So one of the areas that I work on today is exactly that. Can I use
Mm.
AI engineering and neuroscience, combine it to actually to create these behaviors, which are sustained behaviors? So it's a very new area, and with something like smartphone, which is actually the first time we have an always with me, always on medium. So our ability to create a habit using this medium is very different from earlier we had only television, which you see only for about an hour, hour and a half in a day. But with this medium, our ability to create habits in people have dramatically gone up. But we need to know a lot about this medium, and that's one of the areas my team is working on a lot. But you're right, habit, creating a habit is the dream that each of us should work towards.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting you bring that point up because one of the things that we often see today in generations that we are talking about, let's say Gen Zs or Gen Alphas for that matter, these are digital first generation. So the probability of them having a mobile phone in the first couple of years of their being born is up there 90-95%. They have perhaps learned eating watching YouTube videos or a lot more. So you're right when you say that at the end of the day that the the chances of creating new habits using a digital device like a smartphone is very high, and we should really look at how do we enhance that. But there is also a problem that it brings, or observed problem, if I can call that, is the fact that attention spans have gone down. The whole social media culture has created extreme amount of challenges and pressure for academicians, school teachers, even organizations for that matter. I mean, there have been cases where people have been found, watching reels at work. Now, go to any shop today, anywhere in the country, they would not be as interested to get up and sell things to you, but they would be busy watching their YouTube videos and reels. What is it that we could do as humanity to address that, or is this a problem that has gone way too out of our hands?
See, I would, none of them I would use the word problem. I always see all this as trends, as opportunities. And I
Mm,
think one of my this is that we don't learn from these. For example, as you rightly said, attention spans have gone down. But
mm,
has all of us, and I'm asking corporates and others, have you really learned it? And have you really accepted it?
mm.
Because yes, my generation grew up with television, and the context
Yeah.
duration of television when the screen was in front 90% of the time is a Nielsen number. It's 5 minutes. 5 to 21 minutes is the context duration on television screen. Now, based on it, in that you went and put some 30-second commercial or persuasion to get people to change. Now, as you rightly said, now there is a smartphone. Now look at all the advertisements that are released on the smartphone. They're mostly 30-second commercials. That means none of these people have taken into consideration what is a simple question. What is the context duration of the smartphone? And my team did that study, and what we found is 90 percentile of the interactions on the phone, actually less than 5 seconds. 95 percentile of the interactions on the smartphone are less than 10 seconds, which means on the television context durations 5 to 21 minutes. The context duration on smartphones is 5 to 10 seconds, which means our traditional approach to persuasion stimuli, the duration of it was 30 seconds. There's no way you can have it. So my team has gone on to develop something called micro stimuli, where the persuasion stimuli, we said we have to do it in milliseconds. In milliseconds, we have to do that. And we said, yes, how do you do it? Now, it's a new challenge, but if this is the medium, now fit into this medium. You can't take the old things and expect it to work. So those of us who think ahead, those of us who look at it, will not see that as the problem, but I think we'll see it as an opportunity to be ahead of everyone and have a point of view on how to communicate on smartphones. So I'm seeing these changes as opportunities, and I think we should embrace changes, or and then business or otherwise, or even your professional standing. I think again, as I said, depends upon how much you can question the status quo, and then adapt to the changes that are happening around us. That's the way things should be.
So, Biju, that's great from your perspective of how you're looking at it. But I don't think the role of an educator or a role of a parent or a role of a grandparent, for that matter, has woken up to understand this as well, right? I mean, if I were to talk about a faculty member or a even as a parent, I would say, don't look into screens too much. Don't waste time in looking at screens too much. Whereas I think there is a gap between what we are consuming and what is expected to be consumed. So, for example, an educator would say, I think people are not listening to me because they're busy watching their screens. A parent would have a different point of view. How do we educate them, and what do we need to do to make sure that they understand their responsibilities better as well?
Again, obviously new challenges come in. I'm not denying it at all. Let me give both of them what you said. One, because you said educators, I think our whole focus of our education so far has been about giving the right answers and the correct answer, the perfect answer. Okay, as long as you write the perfect answer, the definition as it was given there, you get full marks. If you miss one word or something, you will get lower marks.
Correct.
Now with LLMs and now smartphone being the hand, any question that I can just answer this here. So I think that whole focus on expecting students to know the answers has changed. Then what is but really required? I think I always now saying the education system has to change to get people to ask the right questions. And I think one of the best examples I give is actually it happened long back. There was this mathematician by name David Hilbert, 1900. In one of the conferences, he said, "Oh, you're a great mathematician. These are 23 questions. Now solve it." Now the whole 20th century, I think people were trying to solve one of these. Now, even in 2025, only 13 of them have been solved fairly fully, which means that David Hilbert created that level of curiosity with questions. Now, this one to teachers is that, can you actually raise a question that makes students, I want to find answers to? So I'm just going back to the railway scenario. Actually, when we went into the railway, we went into the accident spots and we realized I can see a train coming in from both directions. So the only question we had is, how can someone get hit by a train they can see coming? how can someone get hit by a train that they can see coming? It took us 6 months to answer that question. Now, I believe the role of not just educators, even corporate leaders, is not to give answers. Oh, tell me, okay, you asked me something. Yeah, yeah. From my experience, I can tell you this is the way to approach that problem. No, you need to raise questions as a leader. The team then is sitting, scrambling, doing whatever to find answers for. I think that there is a fundamental shift. And that's why I said we need to change with the things changing around. But let me
Yeah.
also tell you, you're right, Gopal. People are all sitting like this. Now, there is a person, who's actually looked at what is the relationships that happen. And I think, Robin Dunbar has looked at it. And Robin Dunbar basically has got the Dunbar number. He said, the most, what we call intense friends that we have, the friends to whom we open our mind and hearts to, uh, cognitively, what we can have is 5 people. That's the
5. Yeah.
maximum we can have.
Yeah.
The older generation, if you ask the older generation how many friends you have to whom you can open your hearts to, they'll find at least three, four, five of them. But if you
Mm.
take this generation, 35 to 40% of this generation don't even have one person to open their hearts to. So I fully agree with you. While they might have social media and other things around, their connections are they don't have it. This is the loneliest generation that we ever seen. And this loneliness is creating a whole lot of anxiety problems, depression problems, suicidal problems, and other things around. So, one of the big responsibilities parents and educators have is to make sure that our kids actually develop connections, friendships.
Mm. Mm.
And so, the need for, say, games where people come together, people sing together, people dance together, do activities together has to become a completely new way of looking at it, because we can't allow, because man is a social being, we can't allow this level of loneliness in our kids. So we need to be cognizant of what is happening around.
Yeah.
And again, I said, where there is a problem, I'm not saying everything there's a problem. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to
Correct.
say that's why I said things are different. This is just the old ways of working will work again. No, look around, see what's happening around us, and use that to develop new, what I call interventions to deal with the new challenges that we are facing. So I just said, with the social media, both of them, the role of questions, the need for connections, these are all new things which never happened even 10 years back. I don't think there was such a need that existed.
Correct. Correct. True. True. Very true. And then I think if we are talking about this as a reality of the loneliness and loneliest generation, we're also talking about a nation of, aspiring young, energetic population that is working towards the India 2047 vision. Um, are we doing enough as humanity, or a citizen of a country, to be able to achieve that vision? Or are there things that we need to do more and differently? Any views on that?
The reason I'm laughing is because Niti Aayog has something obviously called the Vikasit Bharat 2047.
Yes.
And there is also a wing within that, there's a team called the Frontier Tech Hub, which is making
Hmm.
sure that India to be 2047 by 2030, 2035, technologically, we sort of really decide what to do. So there are 16
Correct.
streams where each team is being led by one private sector company is leading it.
Hmm.
And fortunately, Fractal, and so I'm leading that expert panel is on human-centered AI. So I'm actually heading the human-centered AI expert panel of Frontier Tech Hub, along with there are three, four other
Yeah.
very senior professionals across the world. And the question that you asked is a question that has been asked to us. How do you
Hmm.
make sure, as India moves towards 2047, how do we make sure this? We have one of the largest number of youngsters, the digital natives around there. How do you
Yeah.
carry them with us? And I think we are in the process of preparing that particular document. And I hope when the document comes out, which will be in a month or two, we will be in a position to really give you good answers. But let me tell you, the political leadership, our policy, maker leadership at the highest level has the same question that you have. And I think they're very
Mm.
cognizant of it. And that's why they've asked us and said, yes, we'll have technological revolutions, all of it, but it has to be centered around not just the youngsters. I think this one they have said is we have 111 aspirational districts in this country.
Yeah.
That means they are the poorest districts in this country. All these developments have to actually lift the people from the aspirational districts on upwards.
Correct.
And when you see some of the work that is happening in some of the aspirational districts of this country, and I would say I am very optimistic about the future of this country. Just recently, Dumka district in Jharkhand, for example, and I think that case study is a part of the report. I think will hopefully will come in. You know,
Sure.
there are no the high schools. There are no teachers out there because whatever reason you can blame it. Now, what did the collector do? Instead of blaming that and saying because a lot of students are dropping out, forget about it. No one is joining engineering college. Forget about an IIT. What he's done is he's used AI and is actually making sure that the students now actually have access to some of the best teachers in the country on their laptops and on their mobile phones. And so amazing, and using their smartphones, they can link up to any teacher or a question, and within 60 seconds or less than that, a teacher from somewhere around the country will come and answer to it. And I used to see the number. The last year, that two students from that district have gone on to join IIT.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
this is where
That's
I'm
something.
talking about this country. And when I said I'm so optimistic about it, so it's some of the poorest districts of our country with the power of technology and with a vision, with of this district collector and a whole lot of other people, we're going up, Gopal. I'm very optimistic about our future.
Wonderful. Um, on that note, I think we covered quite a few things today in the conversation, and I have a typical ritual as part of the podcast, which is a rapid fire. So I have a few questions for you on that as well. Uh, when we often look at behaviors, there is always a lot of myth around it. So the first question that I have for you is this: one behavior myth that refuses to die.
As I said, man is a conscious, rational being. That's a myth.
Hmm.
It is too strong, and it's not going to die for a long time, but it has to die. That's the only way we are going to progress. Otherwise, the failure rate that we have in managing, with that belief that man is conscious, rational, all those strategies are bound to fail.
Wow, sure. In your view, awareness or habit, which one wins?
Habit any day, and awareness. It's an overrated. It's important. Many times, now we're talking about an air accident there. In my book,
Yeah.
I speak about the Mangalore air tragedy, where as he was landing, the man, as he was landing, he had four warnings from the machine and three warnings from the co-pilot not to land his plane, but he landed. Why did he do that? And he's one of the most experienced pilot Indian Air India Express had. So this awareness it's a very we think that leads to the right behavior is again one of those wrong assumptions we have about human behavior. So awareness building is important. I'm not denying it, but that does not lead into behavior change. But real behavior change happens when you manage to create a habit. So what we should
Yeah.
actually work towards is not to build more awareness, because after some time awareness just doesn't
Yeah.
do anything. There is an awareness action gap. How do you bridge that and manage to get action, and that action not just on once or twice but on a sustained basis, that it becomes a habit. So working towards habit is what I think all of us as professionals should work towards. Awareness building is very easy, and we should not, there's no point in focusing that. I think we should focus on habit formation.
Very well said. I mean, it gives me a lot of thoughts to think about and work towards as well. Um, One real world project that changed you on how you think about human behavior.
Um, Actually, there was a bank that came to us, and these are, the bank had a fairly large number of people who have not paid back their loans, and they said, "Can you get these guys and figure out a way to get these guys to pay the loans?" So even to recruit people for the research, it wasn't easy because they were always avoiding all the calls from the bank.
Mm.
Somehow we managed to get through to them. And in the meantime, we also had done our work by figuring out how does the bank, call centers and all speak to these people. And most of these are avoiding, so they get their wife's number, then call up the wife and say, they but the moment they get it, it's like, what do you think? You can run.
Mm.
Ta, 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 ta. So I think the basic attitude that we had is the chore. Okay, he's not paid in the last 6 months. So we need to
Yeah.
get after him. And he's not taking our calls also. But I think when we did research, and we have a unique research methodology called Ethno Lab, I think what we found is almost in 98% of these people, there is a man who says, I know I've taken the loan. I need to pay back. I know, and I will. I will pay back. You know, next 3, 4 months, I don't know how to do it because, I started a business with a lot of intention, but, it failed. And then there was this medical problem for my father. That also
Yeah.
took away all my money. I think we have done it among loan defaulters. We've done it in Red Street, and on people who are going for paid sex. In all of them, what we find is the biggest this one is in 98% of the humans are good, honest human beings. And I think that to me, these are 1, 2 of these projects. Most of this, bank project said deep inside all of us, he's not a chore. There is an honest man, and we found strategies to address that, and we improved the collections by 20%. So I think that has been one a project that really taught me something really intense about human behavior. And that's why, again, my optimism about human beings, my fellow human beings, is very high. They're all nice people. At times, circumstances and context, and at times makes them, do some wrong things. But fundamentally, deep inside them, most of them, 98% of them,
Yeah.
there is a good man. And I think it's up to us to find that good
Focus on
man
the
and
good.
relate.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, for some reason, we always keep finding reasons to find the bad in the other person. And there is a very famous podcast that is going on, which is doing rounds about a person, which, of course, we don't want to talk about that. But I mean, the fundamental premise is that this person is a chore, which is not how it should be. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. A workplace ritual that you would ban today.
Workplace ritual that I would ban today. Just let me. I might have a lot of rituals that I would want to start in an organization, but one that I would ban, I don't know which one. Some of it already been banned because what we call separate rooms. Sorry,
Yeah,
cubicles, this, that, and
cubicles
all.
and all.
Yeah, those are all clearly things to be banned, but nothing is coming in immediately to my head as to
Yeah, that's
what
okay.
should be
That's
banned.
okay. And behavior change in one word from your perspective.
It's about understanding and communicating to the non-conscious processes of the brain.
Mm, mm. Very well said. Biju, thank you so much for your time. Any parting thoughts for the audience that would listen in?
No, I just want to remind that this quote comes from a book called Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam. And in that, he says, this new understanding of behavior that I just spoke about, that it's non-conscious, emotional self is the center, and the conscious, rational man is not there. And he says, this new understanding of behavior constitutes a revolution no less intriguing, perhaps far more powerful than the discovery that the sun really does not revolve around the earth. So what I just spoke about is as fundamental as what
That's right.
Galileo had told us, a few centuries back. It is as fundamental a discovery as that. I think we need whoever embraces this, and my belief is their ability to influence human behavior will definitely be much, much higher. That's my parting thought.
Incredible. Thank you, Biju. Really, really appreciate your thoughts, your perspectives, your guidance to a lot of us who are listening in and who will listen in later as well. Not just for the science, but clarity, for naming what so many of us feel but don't have words for. I think what you did was to remind us that human behavior isn't a moral failing, but it's also not about weakness or willpower. It's about wiring. It's a pattern. It's more or less always unseen. And maybe the real shift we need isn't more awareness, but a bit of more humility and conscious effort towards building habits. So let's not try to stop fixing people. We should probably start redesigning the systems around them. We should probably stop expecting logic and start building how the brain actually works. So this conversation, all of you, was not about just neuroscience. It was about empathy. For me, it was about meeting people beneath the surface, about the courage to question very tools we have always used to drive change. So the next time you're building a policy or a program or an initiative or a workshop, pause. Ask, am I speaking to the mind or am I designing for the brain? Because the real change doesn't begin with telling people what to do. It begins with understanding what they never say out loud. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay calm, stay human. Thank you.